Hey there, and welcome to my channel! This is ERGE, and I shall be your humble host. And guess what? We're going to play today. No, not League of Legends. Sorry to disappoint you. It's actually the motherfucking long-awaited Dark Souls. So let's view the awesome cinematic and see for yourselves how enormous Yorn the Giant actually is.
Yes, indeed. It is called Lothric, where the transitory lands of the Lords of Cinder converge. In venturing north, the pilgrims discover the truth of the old words. The fire fades, and the lords go without thrones. When the link of fire is threatened, the bell tolls, unearthing the old lords of Cinder from their graves. Aldrich, saint of the deep, Farron's undead legion, the Abyss Watchers. And the reclusive lord of the profaned capital, Yorn the Giant. Only in truth, the lords will abandon their thrones. And the unkindled will rise. Nameless, accursed undead, unfit even to be cinder. And so it is that Ash seeketh embers.
Okay people, so I was thinking while customizing my character it would be really useful for both of us to actually discuss some general information about the previous Dark Souls 1 and 2 and the actual last one. So since I'll be making a walkthrough of the whole game, this basic lore and plot will actually help us during the game to make it more understandable. And I think it might get a bit in details, which are also a must-have information, at least for me personally, before I physically start the game. So a small warning for you, there will be some massive spoilers, because I did some serious research regarding its features as well as actual in-game information. So I should probably start with a brief introduction to what happened in Dark Souls 1 and 2. Okay, sadly, Dark Souls 1 has a complex, subtle, and deceitfully deep pool of lore. For some people, the game is about the challenge, the triumph and victory. Defeating bosses is the only driving force. For others like me, it's a mixture of this and the desire to uncover a little bit more of the story. Some of this speculations on my part, and will in some cases be an educated opinion. To begin, let's hit some of the basics. In the beginning of all time, in Dark Souls 1, the world was vast and grey and barren. Only the massive stone-like arch trees grew there, ascending high into the fog that shrouded the world. The rulers of that time were dragons, everlasting, whose stone scales granted them immortality. The dragons also held the primordial crystal. The crystal, a powerful artifact which I don't really know what the fuck they're doing with it. Little is known about that period. Only the most ancient of all things were around, and so it was called the Age of the the Age of the Ancients. But then there was fire, or so the lore says. This sounds like the fucking creation of the world. It is a mystery from where fire came. I only found out that I think it suddenly came to be deep in the hollows of the world, raging brightly and hotly, bringing disparity into the cold and dark world. It is in this first flame that the four souls of the lords are found. These souls are massively powerful, granting those that hold them godlike power, and thereby dominion in the new world. And regarding the souls, one soul was found by Nito, the first of the undead. Another was found by the Witch of Izalith, which was a powerful sorceress. The third was Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight. And the last came to being known only as the Furtive Pygmy, the soul weak and flickering, unique to the rest. I might cover more of these lords individually, but for now, suffice to say each was powerful and determined to carve their places in the new time. And carve they did. With the lords leading the charge, a war brought upon the dragons with the intention to usurp their hold over the land, sea and air as well. So, as I was saying about Gwyn used his power to harness the power of lightning. He and his loyal knights hurled massive bolts of lightning, peeling away the stone skills of the dragons, rendering them mortal, sadly. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos used the catalysts of Izalith, powerful artifacts, and wove massive firestorms, burning the arch trees, of course, which I was talking at the beginning of my speech. The homes of the dragons, which were Nito unleashed death and disease upon the dragons, and their bodies crumbled away in miasma. Sadly again. I should mention at this point Seath the Skillless and Albino, dragonborn without the stone skills that granted immortality, betrayed his own kind and aided Gwyn in the war. Can you believe it? Fucking dragons. While not immortal, Seath was still very powerful and very wise, and he coveted the primordial crystal. Who would have guessed it? This war of fire ended when finally the last dragon fell, and the lords were triumphant, taking their places as gods in the new world. They ushered in the age of fire, an age of prosperity, growth, and everything else. the Lord's domain came to be known as Lordran, the land of the Lords, and many humans' land began to spring up and flourish around it, and daisies and for many centuries, or perhaps even millenniums, if these civilizations grew like very big, and the people loved and feared the lords who lived as gods in the city of, I think it was Londo. Yeah. However, nobody was aware of the darkness which was about to come. Of course, this was completely unpredictable, was it? So, for reasons unknown to the lords, their souls began to dwindle in power, and the first flame began to weaken, sadly again. So, with the threat of fire leaving the world, the lord and the people began to panic, terrified of returning to the dark. Who isn't afraid of the dark? I am not. Or am I? The Witch of Izalith attempts to recreate the first flame using powerful sorcery, but fails and instead releases fires of chaos. These flames could not be controlled, and the witch and her followers and most of her children are consumed in this flame. The flames twisted the witch and corrupted her completely. Sadly again, becoming the bed of chaos, the mother to all demons. Now that is something. And Gwyn attempts to aid Izalith in this cataclysm, but it soon becomes apparent that Izalith is lost, and his knights return with armor charred black, an ill omen for what is to come. Sadly again. Finally, conceding to what he sees as a final solution, Gwyn divides his power among his children and leaves Londo to link his soul to the first flame, aptly located in the, I think it was the kiln of the first flame, and there he was hoping to feed it, allowing the light to last a little longer. And much of his army followed him there, like everyone, not everyone. And when the flame rekindled, they were burned to ashes, leaving behind only suits of armors that now wander the world. Yeah, right now. There is one behind you. Carefully. So for defying the coming dark, Gwyn somehow proliferates the undead curse. It is not exactly clear how this curse came to be, but its effects are catastrophic. So, when one becomes undead, they are marked by the accursed dark sign. Their bodies slowly decay, and upon death, they are reborn from Bonfire. Shrines to the first flame, actually. So slowly, over many deaths, undead begin to hollow, becoming more savage and less intelligent, of course. So, the people of the world almost universally feared and hated those cursed with undeath, and built an asylum in the far north, where they actually send the undead to wait the end of the world. This year, 8,000 years after Gwyn linked the first flame and the chosen undead is found. And the events of the Dark Souls take place, of course. Now that's quite a long story, and it only barely covers the pillars of which the Dark Souls games are built. Whichever weapons the player is with, they must fight Gwyn inside the kiln of the first flame. Once Gwyn is defeated, the player may either sacrifice themselves to rekindle the flame or let the flame become extinguished. In the dark ending, multiple primordial serpents, including Frampt and Kathy, are seen bowing before the protagonist in the new Dark Age, also known as the Age of Man. Okay, enough with the Dark Souls 1 lore. Let's talk about Dark Souls 2 lore and plot and everything. Okay, so I found some detailed informations regarding the lore of Dark Souls 2, which actually quite served my desire of understanding of what happened after Dark Souls 1. So the story of Dark Souls 2 begins with a human who is to become a hollow, a zombie-like being after dying. To break this, the undead travels to the fallen kingdom of, I think it was Drangleic, and is tasked by the Emerald Herald with obtaining 4 great souls from other powerful undead. And once obtained, the Emerald Herald directs the undead to seek the king in the capital. After fighting through the remains of the royal guards, the player encounters the Queen Chandra, who reveals that the king failed in his duty and fled his kingdom long ago. She asks the protagonist to slay the king and bring his signed ring to her. Yeah, sad story, right? Right. So, near the end of the queen's quest, the player learns that the ruin of the kingdom was in fact caused by Nashandra. She came to the king and deceived him into launching an ill-fated invasion across the sea into the lands of the giants. She coveted their souls and sought to steal their power. Though the raid succeeded in stealing the giants' power, the Ashen Mist's heart, the giants retaliated. Invading Drangleic, the giants eventually destroyed the kingdom. With his kingdom in ruins, the king discovered Nashandra's true purpose and locked himself actually inside the undead crypt. So he basically just locked himself. Yeah, and confronting the Emerald Herald one final time, she states that Nashandra is a fragment of Manus, holder of the Dark Soul. She asks the protagonist to put Nashandra to rest and link the fire. So the player basically has to kill Nashandra at the end of the game, which makes her the end boss, I think, right? Yeah. At the same time, Udia, the king's brothers, is trying to help the protagonist understand that there might be another way, a way out actually of the cycle of light and dark. The downloadable content special edition slightly changes the ending, and the player is instead given a choice. The player can either link the fire, restarting the Age of Fire and repeating the cycle, or the player can walk away, as they have now collected the 4 crowns and can resist the effects of following and follow their own unknown path beyond light and dark. Well, effectively ending cycle. And this is where the plot of Dark Souls 2 ends. Yes, a quick and briefly introduction to the whole plot. Fortunately this time, not sadly. So, one of the most unfair charges leveled at the Soul series is that the game lacks story. Like really. Dark Souls 2 has a detailed lore and narrative, but the thing is that it's not served up on a plate. And now I'll be quoting a rich Stanton, I think that's his name, yeah, which practically said that in order to understand what's going on in any Souls game requires you to be some cross between Indiana Jones and Professor Layton. What the hell, dude? So digging up random puzzle pieces and working out how to fit them together. Okay, so that's pretty much it about the lore and plot of Dark Souls 1 and 2. Finally! Too much information, right? Now I can actually talk about the game we're playing. So, let's talk. Okay, so as you all surely know, Dark Souls 3 is an action role-playing video game developed by From Software and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment for PlayStation 4, Xbox One and Microsoft Windows. So in Dark Souls 3, the player controls a character from a third-person perspective through the dark fantasy world of Lothric. Yeah, that's where the action is. The Kingdom of Lothric. The gameplay is similar to other entries in the series. Players are equipped with a variety of weapons, items and magic to battle against enemies. Similarities to other titles in the series, such as Bonfires, which serve as progress saving checkpoints, so those are freaking important to find them if you don't want to start all over. And Estus Flasks, which are like healing potions, which serve as health and magic skill replenishing items return. So, new gameplay elements include the return of magic meter from Demon's Soul, and a new combat system giving players additional weapon specific skills that provide power-ups or deliver powerful special attacks. Combat is actually faster and more fluid in Dark Souls 3 than previous installments, and players' movements such as backstepping and swinging heavy weapons are performed more rapidly. And they really are. I've watched some videos on YouTube regarding Dark Souls 3 and just the combat is really fluid and fucking fast, especially when battling bosses, which are quite enormous, and they move twice as faster as you do. It doesn't make any sense. The game is just too hard. Well, we'll see in the next episode how hard it actually is. Okay, so the plot is quite briefly detailed. Set in the Kingdom of Lothric, the player is tasked to survive an oncoming apocalypse brought about by the ongoing conflict between light and dark, of course, across the series. To survive this event, they must face the Lord of Cinders. Yes, those are practically the strongest bosses in the game, I think. I'm not really sure, but we'll see. And the Lords of Cinders are previous heroes who linked the fire as the cycle of light and dark reaches a breaking point. Similar to Dark Souls 2, fast travel will be available from the outset and players will be able to respect stat points. And the new game will feature new weapons, items, and reconfigured enemy locations. Durability will be somewhere between the first two games. The same summoning system from the first two games remains for the third installment, as well as illusory walls. Now, regarding durability, a long bracket explaining the durability thing, which is a must-have information. Durability is a point system that keeps track of a weapon or piece of armor condition. Some items are fragile and have a low maximum durability, reaching into the low 10s, while some may be incredibly resilient, going as high as 900. So in this system there are 3 levels of durability, each of which affects the performance of the weapon. So a question would be, how can you repair your equipment? Well, repairing is the process of paying souls. So souls are the main and only form of currency in the game. Souls, you have to acquire them by killing or just finding them through the world map. So you have to pay souls to restore durability to a piece of equipment. The cost of repair is dependent on how much durability the piece of equipment has lost, and repairing can either be done through the use of blacksmith from a repair box, through the use of repair powder, or the last one, the casting of the sorcery repair. So there actually is a spell called repair. Okay, another question which might interest us and find a rather good answer is how equipment loses durability. Okay, so equipment can lose durability in a few ways. Armor, for example, is damaged anytime you take damage. Some enemies, such as Chaos Eaters, have attacks which decrease the durability of all your equipment. There is also the spell Acid Surge, which degrades equipment in the same way as the Chaos Eater's attacks. The Gaping Dragon, yeah, I think that's a boss. No, I don't know, we'll see. So the Gaping Dragon also has an ability like this. And weapons can lose durability by hitting enemies, and also by hitting walls. Hitting breakable objects has not been tested yet. Yeah. And there will also be an FP, aka focus points, aka magical energy bar, which I don't think I will use. My knight will surely use very little of the magic potential skills of this game, similar to the one found in Demon Souls. Okay, and this bar, which will govern battle arts and spell uses. And the bar can be refilled by resting at a bonfire or by drinking from the Ash Estus Flask. I think that's a mana potion. Yeah. Okay, about the stats in Dark Souls 3. They are what determines a player's health, damage, stamina, etc. The stats in Dark Souls 3 are similar to previous Souls games. If you would like to respect your character, you'll have to visit the Rosaria, Mother of Rebirth, who's hiding somewhere near the Glazing Chapel. And those stats will be, the first one of them would be Vigor, or how should I spell it? Which determines the amount of health or hit points that your character has. It is an important attribute to level up. The second stat would be Attunement, which determines the number of attunement slots or amount of spells you can carry at the same time, and also raises focus points. So this practically is a stat which is based on your magical skills. Yeah, it is an important attribute to level up for sorcerers, clerics, and pyromancers. The third one would be Endurance, which determines the amount of stamina your character has. So basically, primal energy. The fourth would be Vitality, which determines your character's equipment load and poison resistance. So if I want to carry more, I have to be vital. Also affects physical defense. Yeah. And the fifth would be Strength, which it will be major for me. Is an attribute for wielding heavy, powerful weapons, heavy armor, and great shields. Increases the damage you do with strength, scaling weapons, and fire resistance. Yeah, so my knight will be based on Vitality. I think, no, not Vitality, Vigor, and Strength. And the sixth would be Dexterity, which is an attribute for wielding advanced weapons. Also reduces spellcasting time and damage from falling, so I don't think I'll use this very much. The seventh will be Intelligence, which is required to cast sorceries and pyromancies and also boost magic defense. Of course, that's why it's called intelligence. And the last two of them would be faith, which is quite particular. Faith is required to cast miracles and pyromancies and also boost dark defense. And the last one would be luck, which is again particular. And luck determines how often your enemies will drop several items upon their death. So this could be really useful, but I don't think I'll put any points in it, in this luck. And it also increases bleed and poison capabilities. Also boosts curse resistances. So basically, there are 9 stats. 9, not 10, 9. And this info is quite useful to actually exactly know what each of it does, right? And if it's of any use to you. And that's pretty much all we need to know about stats. And the last thing, one more thing, we actually dive. Actually, it's one more thing before we actually dive into the game with this badass character I've created. Some general information regarding the new content and the exact number implemented in the game. So, there are 10 classes, 45 new enemies, 15 new bosses, 100 new weapons, 140 new armor sets, and 60 minutes of cutscenes, and enemy and boss numbers don't include those from the previous games. Also, weapon and armor sets also don't include those from the previous games. Again, 200 items. This includes spells, rings, and consumables, of course. Cutscenes will be mostly in engine. There will be 12 areas in total. It will be a similar amount to Dark Souls 1. And with the sacrifices, you can supposedly use them to help you. 2 examples were spawning a bonfire and then an NPC. They can also affect light sources, enemy layouts, and boss battles. Boss battles will now have a heat up factor. An apparent example given was that a boss could completely change to something else. And you'll know what I'm talking about in the second episode. Like, seriously. The bosses really change to something else. There is a nice looking enemy that could turn into a grotesque beast. That's hard to spell actually. It's speculated that this is similar to Demon Souls world tendency mechanic. Dark Souls 3 will introduce sword fighting arts. They sound like equipable special moves that can give you abilities. 2 examples are given: rush in, as in dive towards an enemy, taking damage but also delivering massive damage, and circle, which is a most likely type of dodge move. It's described as something to use when vulnerable and want to get away from the enemy. Okay, so now I think we got all that it takes to actually play this game and understand it. Sorry for the lots of info I've stuck in your head. Maybe some of you are lore or plot lovers and actually want to know what's really going on with the storyline of the game, which basically in-game it doesn't exist. And that's why I did explain all of this, including plot and lore as well as gameplay information. well, in the next episode I will actually play the freaking game. And I can't wait for it, because it seems like a hell of a challenge. Okay, so thank you for watching. I won't ask you to subscribe or like this video, because it was just me basically talking boring stuff while creating my character, so I just hope we catch up later. So take care of yourselves. Peace!